Welcome to our podcast, Doing It Right. This podcast reveals authentic stories from successful leaders doing it right. It's about their journey to become a leader, their choices, motivations, and lessons. In essence, how they built successful personal brands. Your host is Valerie Sokolowski, author of 8 leadership books and nationally known as an authority on executive presence and personal branding. Let's get started. Here's Valerie.
Well, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West retired from a 22-year career in the U.S. Army, where he proudly served in operations at Desert Shield and Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. He's a former U.S. representative from Florida, an inductee in the University of Tennessee Army ROTC Hall of Fame, holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Tennessee, and 2 master's degrees. My gosh. You've maybe seen Colonel West often as a Fox News contributor and an author coming out with his 3rd book. So most importantly, I'm going to mention one more thing before I turn the camera to Colonel West, and that is he's a dedicated family man, married to Dr. Angela Graham West, a PhD and MBA, who now enjoys working as a financial advisor, and father of 2 lovely young women, Aubrey and Austin. Whew. Colonel West, how are you?
It's good to be with you, Valerie. And, I just pulled that down off of eBay. They said you can easily purchase a biography that you can tailor to yourself. So worked out well.
You're amazing. And you're an author, so I have to look at this because you have 2 books and you said you're coming out with a 3rd one. The first one, Guardian of the Republic, when did that come out and what is that about?
It came out in 2013 and really is kind of a philosophical biography of who I am and why I think and believe this way. It tells the story of growing up inner city Atlanta, Georgia, 2 great parents, Herman West Sr., Elizabeth Thomas West, and the impact that they had, as well as the impact that the military had on my life.
I was going to ask you about your background. Why don't we just put that book down, get back to the second one, and ask you about your background. What's in this book? What do we want to know about?
Well, it says Guardian of the Republic, and when you think about my life and my family, it has been about being guardians of this great constitutional republic. My father was a U.S. Army corporal in World War II. As a matter of fact, he served in North Africa, Sicily, and in Italy. And interestingly, he was wounded in the Po Valley while running supply dispatches, and my first tour of duty was in Italy as well. So
oh my goodness.
I remember when my dad sat me down at the age of 15 and asked me to be the first officer in our family because my older brother was a Marine Corps infantryman that he was wounded in Vietnam at a place called Khe Sanh. So I did 22 years, and I will never forget the day that right here in Texas, down in Fort Hood, on 6th of June 2002, when I took command of a field artillery battalion. My nephew was there. He was currently then a cadet at North Georgia College, and he said he wanted to be a lieutenant, a paratrooper, and also an artillery officer like his uncle. So he now is a major. He has done 3 combat tours of duty. So really, that's what we are in our family. We're guardians of this republic.
That's a great synopsis of probably what's in here. But in doing so, what's been the greatest part of being in that kind of a family?
Well, just achieving, that dream that my dad had for me. Like I said, at the age of 15, he challenges me to be the first officer in the family. I started out in high school, junior ROTC at Grady High School in Atlanta, Georgia. And, growing up in the same neighborhood that produced Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an incredible impact upon me. And, of course, when I graduated high school, I went off to the University of Tennessee and went through Army ROTC there. And on 31 July 1982, that was the day that my father was on my right shoulder and my mom was on the left shoulder, and they pinned those gold second lieutenant bars on my shoulders.
Don't you know he was proud? They were proud. And now you're proud of all the history.
Just carrying on that legacy of a great man, my dad.
There's nothing better than having the values put into a child from the family, and that's not always the case.
And that's what it says in Proverbs 22:6. It says, train up a child in the way that they should go, so that when they grow old, they shall not depart from it. And that's really what the book is about, how those lessons, those values, those principles of my mother and father, those real strong, conservative principles of individual rights and freedoms and responsibility has shaped me into being the person I am today.
What do you do with seeing a young person that tends to maybe wander from those values, even though they were taught at home?
I think it's very important that we understand as adults, as parents, that we have to always continually engage and re-engage with our children or grandchildren even, because if you're not, there's always someone out there that will try to fill that gap and fill that void. Absolutely. And when I look at what is happening with a lot of our young people today, I mean, the fact that we have teenage suicides is such a high rate.
Terrible.
It is absolutely terrible. And so I think that these are young people that are looking out for something to fill, what's missing in their hearts. And when they don't understand that they have, loving parents or loving Heavenly Father, especially, that is important. It always comes back to the home. And I really believe that we need to strengthen the home.
I agree with you. I remember Charles Dobson. I don't know who remembers him or knows him, but
I do.
Talking about the family many years ago.
Yeah, focus on the family.
Focus on the family.
That's
and
right.
It still should be focus on the
Absolutely.
family. What's the second book? The Whole Texas, Whole the Nation, Victory or Death?
Yeah, that book came out just last year in October, and it really talks about the importance of Texas. And when you think about Texas, you think about its history. Going to the University of Tennessee, when you first step foot up there on Rocky Top, you earn that nickname. You become a volunteer. And so it's not like being a bear, a lion, a tiger, a cougar, or whatever. And so you come to understand the history of where we earned that nickname, that moniker. And it was, right here in the state of Texas when, David Crockett, a former U.S. congressman, and other Tennessee volunteers came here to fight for liberty and freedom along with the Texians. And of course, they made an incredible stand for 13 days. They ended up losing their lives, 185 of them, led by William Barrett Travis at the Alamo. So again, when you think about the principles, the values, the rugged individualism, all those things that symbolize Texas, the economic growth, opportunity, and prosperity that you see here today because of the right principles and policies, that's what's drawing so many people here to Texas. But yet there are people that are moving to Texas that want to continue to hold on to the principles and values from the failing places that they are departing. And it reminds me a lot of, when God was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and he told Lot and his family one thing, just one thing: don't look back.
Don't look back.
And we have a lot of people that are moving into the major population centers here in Texas: Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, El Paso, Corpus, that they are looking back to those policies. And they got to understand that, you left because of this. Why would you want to bring that along with you? And so it's very important to understand what Texas symbolizes, what makes Texas so unique, and what makes Texas so important for the United States of America as a whole. And if we don't maintain this thing that we have called Texas, which a lot of people don't know, there's only one flag in this country that can fly at the same height as the American flag, and that's the flag of the state of Texas.
Well, isn't that interesting? That's a good trivia to know.
Texas was its own republic before it became
right.
a state.
You're amazing. Talking about coming to another country and bringing that with you reminds me of all the travels that you've had. And we were talking before the show. And we were talking about different places you've been. And all of a sudden, you started with these accents. So I'm going to throw this at you. So be British, please.
Cheerio, mate. How are you today?
Oh, well, I'm fine.
Very, very upset we did not have a spot of tea before we started the show. But that's okay. I will forgive you. Next time, like a little spot of Earl Grey tea, if I could.
All right. I'll try to do that. Yeah. All right. Let's see. What else? You tell me. What else can you say?
Well, you are Italian.
I am.
My first tour of duty was Italy, so I will say buongiorno. Come va? Tutto bene? Si?
Si?
Good? Yeah?
Yeah?
Alles gut?
I have no idea what you're saying, but it's just great.
Guten Tag, Fräulein.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
So, no.
That's amazing. That has to be a gift of language, don't you think?
Yeah, but the thing is that when you're there in those cultures, in those areas, I mean, you really want to get to know the people and get to know the
Yes.
cultures and what have you. And of course, I've forgotten a lot of it, but it was really neat to be this little kid from the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. And then the next thing you know, you're in the Italian Dolomites, the Alps, and you're learning how to ski. Because that was part of your mission to be able to do cold weather training and mountain and alpine operations. And that's the beauty of the military and what it does. It takes us, and really breaks us out of our comfort zones. I was a kid that was afraid of heights, but my first tour of duty had to be in an airborne unit. So, I had to learn how to jump out of airplanes. And, that's what leadership is. Leadership is, saying that, I can do all things, through Christ Jesus who strengthens us, Philippians 4:13, one of my favorite verses. But it is understanding that you can rise up and above any constraints or restraints that you put upon yourself, and you can be an example to others.
I love what you're saying. And as an executive coach, let me ask you and challenge you on one thing, and that is that sometimes people are working in companies that it's really hard. What would you say to listeners that are in that situation?
I think you always have to go back to the blocking and tackling. As your show says, it's doing what's right. And one of the seminal lessons that I learned from being in the military was that leaders know what right looks like. And when leaders know what right looks like and they do what is right, guess what? They create that type of environment where everybody else wants to do what's right. I think one of the major problems that we have in the United States of America is that we don't have servant leadership. We don't have citizen legislators. We don't have people that understand that they are there to serve someone else, not their own self-interest, not their own special interest, not any certain ideological, political interests. It is there to serve the American people. One of the great things about being in the military is that we take an oath that says, I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this oath without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God. See, we don't take an oath to a person. We don't take an oath to a political entity or whatever. We take an oath to that thing that embodies us, our rule of law. And that's what we believe in. And I just wish that we had people that believed in our core principles and values and not, the manipulation of others. And that's what I see when you see failures of leadership and when you see failures in organizations.
Well said. Well said. If there's one or two attributes from a company standpoint that you see that really takes a company to the next level, as far as leadership at any level, and to me, I think everyone's a leader in a company. It's not about any talent.
They are.
Any title.
Yeah. When I used to, tell my battalion, it was close to 600 soldiers, I said the most important person in our battalion is the newest private. It's not me as the commander.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is so critical with leadership and organizations is that leaders should never take credit. Leaders should always take responsibility. And when people see that you are the one that will give them the praise and the honor for achieving whatever the unit has been successful in doing, guess what? You make them stakeholders. And then all of a sudden they want to do better, and they are thinking about how can I do better to bring greater credit on my unit or my organization, what have you. And if something goes wrong, you stand up and say, hey, it's on me. And that's why when you go to our house, there's several pictures or portraits of presidents there. One of them is Harry Truman, because I loved Harry Truman saying the buck stops here. Because that's how it should be with the leader. Leaders don't look for excuses and they don't look to blame someone else. They say, hey, look, this is what I did. Or this is what happened. I used to always tell the young lieutenants that when you go out and you screw something up and you know that your boss is coming out and he's probably mad, he's going to chew you out, and the first thing you do when they get out of that Humvee or that vehicle, you go up to them, you render a salute and say, sir, let me tell you what just happened. And then you say, let me tell you what I've just done to correct it.
Wow.
You just took all of the fire out of it. Now, he may still want to, yell at you just because, he's got to look like he's the boss, the tough guy. But really, he just saw something in you is that is so important. Anybody can come up with a problem, but leaders come up with solutions.
Very true. That's such a great visual. Just walk up to the Humvee and say, "Let me tell you what I did."
Absolutely. Don't let him get, heading towards you. You go to him. Because, again, that's one of the things that we're taught in the military, in combat. You move to the sound of the guns.
You move to the sound of the guns.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it means that you always should be on the offense.
Okay.
Never on the defense.
Okay.
When you're on the defense, someone else is dictating to you.
That's true.
When you're moving to the sound of the guns, that means you're attacking the problem. You're attacking the issue. You're going on offense. And you are confident that you're going to be able to resolve the issue.
But what if, okay, I totally get that. And sometimes I hear, but I can't afford to lose my job. I'm afraid of losing my job. I have to have this job. That kind of, can hinder someone from being quite that bold.
Well, I will tell you this, Valerie. Each and every day we wake up with three things that no one can take away from us. Okay. But we can surrender. That's your honor, that's your integrity, and that's your character.
Very true.
Now, as you go through the day, you got to make sure at the end of the day, when you look at that person in the mirror, and that's the only Michael Jackson song that I really do like. I mean, Man in the Mirror. Other than that, I don't care about Michael Jackson. But that Man in the Mirror song is important. And so at the end of the day, man or woman in the mirror, you got to say, did I do what was right to keep my honor and my integrity and my character? Because so often we as humans start to worry about that personal discomfort, that personal pain or whatever. Sometimes you have to go through that. That's why when you go and you read Romans chapter 5, verses 3-5, where it says, trials and tribulation produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character. And character produces hope. Not hope in man, but hope in something greater. In James chapter 1, it says, count it all joy when you encounter trials and tribulations. See, you got some pretty nice little bling on your fingers there. Think about this. Yeah, she got big bling. Her husband, boy, you write some big checks.
No, that's not diamonds. It's now, come on, really.
Well, I don't know. I just know it's big
pretty,
bling.
right?
Yeah, it's pretty. But think about this. What is a diamond?
It's a gem out of the earth.
Yeah, it's just a black rock.
That's right.
How do you make a diamond?
You have to polish it.
Intense heat and pressure. How do you purify steel?
I get you.
Intense heat.
Yeah.
So sometimes you need to go through that crucible in order to strengthen your honor, your integrity, and your character. Because a lot of times what we have to understand is God wants to take you through a situation. And if you go through that situation, on the other side, you're going to be an even better, even stronger person.
It's really true.
And so that's what I would say to people, I don't want to lose my job. You know what? You may end up getting a better job.
Exactly.
Because someone will look around and say, that's a stand-up kind of person that I want.
I think we need more people who, like you, are very bold. You don't have any problem in saying it like it is, to the point, succinct, take it or leave it.
Well, again, in Isaiah 54:17, it says, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn, for that is the heritage of those who love the Lord. When Joshua took over the incredible nation of Israel to take them into the promised land, because Moses was not going to be able to do it, God told Joshua 3 times in chapter 1, verses 5-9 in the Bible, be strong and of good courage, for the Lord thy God shall never leave you nor forsake you. And he kept telling that, be strong and of good courage. So again, coming back to what we were talking about originally, when I see our young people that are out there taking their lives,
yes,
it's because they're afraid to walk through that crucible. I mean, you hear about a young girl or a young boy, they take their lives because they broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. A whole lot of boyfriend, girlfriends out there.
Horrible. You
cannot think that that's the end of your life. There was a great song, my favorite rock band is a group called Rush. I mean, yeah, I love Rush. And so there was a song that they wrote called The Pass. And it talks about turn around and walk the razor's edge. Don't turn your back and slam the door on me. Because it was about, people taking their lives and suicide. And this is a very personal story for me. I had a lieutenant. He was my executive officer, second in command of my artillery battery when I was a captain. His name was James McCoy. James McCoy was a stellar officer. I mean, just perfect in every single way, shape, form, or fashion. He was rated the #1 lieutenant in the entire artillery brigade that we had at the 1st Infantry Division. But James McCoy found out something. He found out that his wife, Cheryl, had a little secret life, a little dark side. A lot of other people knew about it, but he was the last to learn. And it was very embarrassing. It was very tough for him. They had two sons. And I will never forget, telling James, look, you can move past this. You can do whatever it needs to do. You stay in the housing on the post, and we'll make sure that Cheryl gets moved off, what have you. But he could not walk that razor's edge. So one Saturday night during the Final Four of March Madness, I invited him to come down. 1991, I believe. I was watching Georgia Tech play. And he shot Cheryl and shot himself. Oh. And so that's what I'm talking about when, it is about that ability to walk through the trials and tribulations so that you build that character, you build that perseverance, you build that hope. And that experience of, I was only, 30 years of age. Yeah. Yeah. And I was the guy that had to identify the bodies that night because I was his commanding officer. So
he lost hope.
He lost hope. Mm-hmm. And remember what I talked about? The trial and tribulation can build the perseverance, and the perseverance can build the character, and the character can build the hope. Not hope in you or hope in man or whatever, because man let you down, but hope in something greater.
Mm-hmm. And everybody needs it.
Everyone needs it. Mm-hmm. We all have a God-shaped hole.
That's very true.
It's all about what we fill it with.
There you go. You're a deep man of faith, and I also know that you are a disciplined man of faith, and just disciplined. Tell us about all the disciplined things that you do.
Well, earlier this week I got back in from California, a trip at like 3 a.m, and I was right back up at 6:30 to get out and go run about 4.5 miles and do my crunches and push-ups and everything on the front lawn. I just think that's very important, that you have structure and you have discipline. Not saying that I'm not a fun guy. I mean, I can't let my hair down, and that's why I have my motorcycle so that I can get out and relax and do things. But I think it's very important to have structure and discipline in your life, because when you do come up with those points of adversity, whatever, you want to be able to say, this is my core.
This is who I am.
This is who
the
I
authenticity
am.
again.
Yeah, and you can't deviate from it. And I never saw, in my parents' house, they never drank, and so that became part of my life. And of course, being in the Army, you're always going to get tempted to do it. But the great thing was that as a young lieutenant, I was always the one that took care of my buddies. I remember my first duty assignment was up the road from here, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. That's the artillery school. Yeah. And we would get long weekends. The guys would always say, hey, Al, will you drive us down? We'll pay for the gas and everything like that, but we know you'll look out for us. And that's what people see in your discipline and in your structure and the way that you carry yourself.
I can understand that. And scuba diving, too, you do.
Yeah, master scuba diver. So, when I was living back down in Florida after I retired, pretty much so every Saturday, after a nice little morning run, go out there and jump in the ocean and get a couple of dives in and, head back home. But now I try to take 1 or 2 trips, one down to Cozumel and another down to the Cayman Islands. Because sometimes you need to just, power down, kind of decompress, and just rejuvenate yourself.
Go ahead.
And I just love the underwater world. It's so peaceful. Oh yeah, it's so peaceful.
I was going to ask what you do today. Do you ever get stressed?
Nah.
No.
Nah.
You're human.
What was that? I forget the underarm deodorant commercial said, "Never let them see you sweat."
Never let them see you sweat, but you do sweat. We all sweat.
No, we all sweat. I was sweating this morning when I was running.
Something else I read that I thought was really interesting was that you carry 3x5 cards with you.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yep.
May I see?
Yeah,
I won't
and-
read, but
No, you can,
Okay.
because as a matter of fact,
Tell us.
these 3x5 cards that I have here, on the first and the second one, are my basic leadership principles.
would you read a few?
There, you do it.
Okay.
What I have there, the first are the 5 standing orders, and those were the 5 things that when I was a commander, I already said that these are our core principles of the unit. So feel free to read.
Okay, I wish I could, but I don't have my glasses on, so
Oh,
you have to read them.
She's over here trying to be vain, folks. Put your glasses on. Put your glasses on.
There you go.
You need your
I need
glasses.
to do that. If I could get unwired, I would.
Go get your glasses. Las.
I know. Oh,
Well, the 5 standing orders. The first one says keep your bayonet sharp. It's very important that a soldier understands that sometimes you're going to have to go into close combat with the enemy, and you got to be able to overpower them. But also, what I tell them is that this is your bayonet. You must always keep your head sharp. You must always be ready to engage any situation and be trained up for that. The second one is keep your individual weapon clean, because any person in the military would tell you the worst thing that could happen is when you're in a firefight and you pull the trigger and you hear click. So you got to keep that weapon clean, but you also need to keep this individual weapon clean. And you never know when you have to make a decision. You know, my wife will tell you that these 3x5 cards are always on the nightstand because something may come to your mind in the middle of the night. You need to be able to write it down. Now you got your glasses.
No.
Or sunglasses.
So you have to know.
She's got a Ray Charles. She got a Ray Charles glasses, man. Look at her.
Anna, thank you so much for
Look,
pulling
she got a
the
daggone Ray. Look at her.
But they were
No,
the
you should
wrong
keep them on.
glasses.
You should keep them on.
Let's see if I can read them any better.
You should keep them on.
Let's see. No, I can't.
Now, that's funny.
Keep going. These are good. These are good.
Okay, the third one says one man does, another man checks.
What does that mean?
Because in the artillery, you have to set numbers. You have to set the quadrant elevation and the deflection on the howitzer.
Okay.
That means that you got to make sure that you put that round, 6, 7, 8, 9, 15 kilometers away where it's supposed to go.
Okay.
But it's always important that someone else checks what you're doing to make sure that you have those settings correct, because if not, just a simple degree off, and someone could lose their life. And so I think as we go through life, we cannot be so arrogant that whatever we're doing, we can't allow someone else to check it to make sure that we're squared away.
I like that one.
The next one is be the expert in your lane and knowledgeable in another, which means that no unit is successful if they put everything in the existence of one person. So everyone needs to have their primary duty, but they also need to have an alternate duty or responsibility so that the mission, the function of a unit can continue to go on. That's the same thing in the job place. And that's why I told my troops, the most expendable person in our battalion of 600 people is me. Because even if I'm not around, you know your task and purpose, and you should be able to carry on. And the last one is be a professional. I think that speaks for itself. And then the 5 C's of leadership, as I call them: courage, competence, commitment, conviction, and character.
Read those one more time.
The 5 C's of leadership: courage, competence, because no one follows a dummy.
No.
Commitment to a core set of principles, beliefs, but you also have to have conviction. Because just because you're committed to something, you may not be convicted to it when something tough comes along. And then character. And character means doing what is right when no one's watching.
That's great.
So,
That's so interesting, Colonel, because I always ask, for the guest to leave pearls of wisdom. I call them teachable points of view. My land, you've given me how many there, and through probably 20 so far. So that's good.
Thank you.
I love that. What a joy to have you on. I had a question I wanted to ask,
Sure.
and before we go, that I did want to see what you would say, and that is when you are developing, as you go out into the workplace and into speaking engagements and everything, what are you seeing today that is still working? That's positive. I'm tired of people saying, well, this is what isn't working.
Yeah.
What is working?
I think that what is still working is people want to have individual responsibility. People want to be given a job. They want to be given a task, and they want to see the accomplishment of it, and they take pride in their work. I still see that happening in the United States of America.
Good.
And I think that the day when we get to the point where we don't want to produce, that we have too many people that want to receive, I think that then we're heading down the road of perdition. Because what made this country so great in just 43 years is that incredible individual entrepreneurial spirit. And we don't want to lose that. And I guess we'll close by saying, always remember that 20 some odd years ago, a country called Venezuela was one of the most prosperous nations in this hemisphere. Then all of a sudden someone comes along and says that you don't have to get out there and work to earn it. We'll give it to you. We'll take from one group and we'll give it to you. And when you do that, you take away a will. You take away drive. You take away determination. You create people to be dependent. And I don't think that America has gotten to the point where the majority of its people want to be dependent. There are some, but I don't think we're there yet. Because when you look at that transition from what Venezuela was to where it is today, that's a lesson for all of us to learn.
Wow. What a powerful way to end our time together, and I wish we had a whole nother hour. Sincerely, thank you so much, so much. You covered so many things, and you're a man to be admired, and I always have.
Thank you, Valerie.
So thanks for being on the show. And for those of you who are watching or listening, please join us next time. When you have any questions for some of these leaders, I want you to feel free to make comments and ask them, even after the fact. This is live, and there's lots of comments that you can still make. And so do so. We'll make sure that they are answered. And until next time, you just please stay authentic. Stay in the realm of being a person of integrity and all of the things that the Colonel has talked about today. That's what this show is about. And so until next time, see you then.
Thanks for listening. To receive Valerie's voice, free monthly leadership tips, and to learn more about her leadership programs and coaching, visit her website, valerieandcompany.com. Next week, we'll be here again to inspire, engage, and equip you with teachable points of view from successful leaders who have been doing it right. Until then, lead authentically.